Hey, welcome back to another podcast today. Today is a little late one. Unfortunately, I fell right back into the old the old perfectionism game again. You know how it goes. Sometimes you just fall right into it and you get a little perfectionism. You have a vision for how you want to do the podcast and you do all these little things and then you realize, oh, look, all the time. It all went by. And I literally had 2 days to do it. So that backfired big time. It was a big lesson, in my own psychology and my own my own flaws. We all learn something these days. Sometimes you just gotta figure it out. You gotta look at yourself and be honest, and that's what this whole thing's about. Improving yourself, figuring out your own psychology. I talk about that all the time. Figure out your own psychology, improve upon that, fix the things you want to fix that aren't helping you, that things that are hindering you. Fix the stuff. Almost said a no word. Fix the stuff that needs to be improved, and stay on it. Always be improving. Always be continuing on in the incline. Right. That way your life is on the incline, not on the decline. So today we're gonna talk about something I love talking about. I love talking about villains. Okay. I'm especially a big fan of villains. Not because I am one. That sounds wrong when I say it. It makes it sound like I'm a villain. I'm not. Promise. Okay? Scout's honor. That's not sarcasm. It's just my humor, man. It has like all these loop-de-loops. Listen. I like villains because a great villain makes a great story. If you don't have a good villain for your story, come on. What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay? Not every story needs to have some grandiose design, but a good villain goes a long way. If you have a bland story, a good villain can completely change the quality of your story. Anyways, I have a whole bunch I could talk about, but if you are interested, look in the description and I'll have a link in there about one of my videos talking about villains, okay? So you can watch that and enjoy that. I actually have a couple podcasts. I'll put a bunch of them in there and you tell me what you think about those in the comment section there, and you tell me what you think about villains in today's comment section as well. So I'm gonna give you the top five in pretty much any story, to be quite honest, when it comes to wealthy men, right? Wealthy people. Let's do it that way. Let's expand it to people, because these guys are the best, in my opinion, the best rich villains out there. Not only just in comic books or science fiction or whatever, but in all of fiction, right? The best rich villains, the most elaborate. There's so much going on with them in psychologically. There's so much going on with them in the lore. There's so much backstory. It's phenomenal. Why did I say phenomenon? They are a phenomenon, but no, seriously though, these guys are something special. Okay. You won't find villains quite like them unless they are some sort of inspiration of a villain that's inspired by them or inspired by these villains directly. Okay, so here comes the top five. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions first. Okay, one of the honorable mentions I'm going to say right out the gate is going to be a little controversial because a lot of people apparently a lot of people like this villain, and that's fine. I don't have anything against it. I like this villain quite a bit, but he didn't quite make the cut for me just because I watched the series quite a bit of times, and the more I watch, the more I realize this guy is not really technically a villain. He's more of a he's almost like a deuteragonist, if you want to say that, or maybe you could see him as a villain that is more of a anti-hero kind of thing. He's not necessarily, he's more of an antagonist. Let's just say that. He's more of an antagonist. He's less of a villain. A villain to me is, there's certain qualities to a villain. One of the qualities to a villain is somebody who's just, for the most part, reprehensible, right? They do actions you don't agree with. You find them not good people. There's very little that's redeeming about them, right? The things that are redeeming about them, they're quality things that separate them from other villains. But in the end, you would not want to save this person, right? This is not somebody who you would save, not a good guy at all, right? That's a villain. An antagonist is more murky, in my opinion. It's a more gray area. These guys are not gray. The guys I'm going to mention are not gray at all, okay? So here's the honorable mention. The first honorable mention is David Zanatos from Gargoyles. Now, David Zanatos is a very wealthy man who resurrected the Gargoyles with some sort of it was a spell that was put on them, some kind of curse or whatever. The main part of the story is this guy, he had ulterior motives and he turned out to be a bad guy, but he had a lot of good qualities to him. You could see him in giving different predicaments, different situations. He could have been a good guy. He could have been a good person, right? He could have been the hero of the story. He's kind of like an Iron Man who went too far, right? He's kind of like he is like if Iron Man decided, if Tony Stark decided, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to push. I'm going to have no limits to my, my methods. And I'm going to keep pushing until people are sick of me. And that's who he was. And it is what it is. He's, to me, not a straight up villain. Not in the classic sense, okay? So that's why he's not on the list. And then there's one more. There's one more, actually. Number 2 for the honorable mentions is going to be, and this is also a little controversial. They're all controversial. Everyone's going to disagree. Everyone's going to be different. That's fine. This guy is a character who a lot of people like. They see him as one of the best villains of all time, and that's okay. I understand. I completely get it. And in some cases, I truly agree. I do agree. He's one of the most well-known DC villains out there, okay? And that is Lex Luthor. Okay, Lex Luthor, he's a great villain in my opinion. He didn't quite make the cut because once again, lots of gray area here with this guy, right? He could be a good guy given other circumstances if Superman wasn't in the picture and he was the kind of guy who, wanted to help save the world. He wanted to do things for the world and give up a lot of things to the world. And now, again, he is an antagonist. I'm not saying he's not an antagonist. He is an antagonist. He's very villainous. He can be seen as a villain. I see him as a villain in this case, but he's just too gray. He's not evil enough, okay? We're looking at dudes who are outright evil. There's nothing good about them for the most part. 99% evil, basically, okay? We're looking for people who are just, they started out maybe one way, but they ended up just awful, okay? So that was honorable mention number 2, Lex Luthor. Now, we're going to start with number 5. Okay, Raz Al Ghul or Raz Al Ghul. He is an evil man. Now, some people say, oh, but he's gray area. He could be a gray area guy. No, this guy wanted to destroy. This guy is the villain, one of the Dark Knight villains, one of the blackest, most evilest, freaking shadowy, just irreprehensible, just unredeemable. Okay. Villains in the Batman mythos, okay? This guy absolutely, positively, just awful. This guy would destroy civilizations, right? He would actually destroy all the civilizations he could destroy constantly until he has the perfect world for his, that he decides, right? He wanted to be a god, right, of these people. He wanted society to go a certain way. It wasn't going the certain way he wanted it to go. That as a result, everything has to burn, right? He was the leader of the League of Shadows, an assassin organization that decided who lives and who dies, okay? This is a cult. This guy was beating death itself. He refused to die. He decided to put himself into a pit of acid, this type of this pool of you don't even know what. Nobody really knows. Let's be honest. Nobody really knows what's in it. Even the comic books are kind of vague. There's some things that we know, but for the most part, this thing that they would put him in, right? This pit. I forgot what the pit is called. But they put him in this pit, and then you go in the pool, in the cesspool, and then you you get out and you're like, oh, rejuvenated, your youth is back. But you're insane. You're completely insane. And only the strongest survive. So he was like super into like this almost borderline eugenicist, strongest survival kind of thing, bloodline kind of thing. And this just so much evil in him. Even his daughter was evil. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm calling it right now. This guy was outright disgusting. Now we got the next guy on the list, who was the Kingpin. The Kingpin is a Marvel villain who grew up with a tragic past. He was a weak person. Okay, he was not a good person in the end, but he started out with a naive look at the world. And we're talking about specifically the Kingpin from the TV show, the animated series, Spider-Man, the animated series. I think that's the best version of him, in my opinion. He is a character who was taken advantage of, and he paid for it, right? And he learned a lot from the criminal system. He became a criminal through the criminal system. The criminal system turned him into who he was. And I find that fascinating. It's something like, this guy is evil by a choice later on, but in the beginning, he kind of was molded and groomed into this way, into this life, right? He just was so unlucky that he decided, well, F it then. I'm going to be a villain, and let's see how it goes. And he became one of the best villains out there. One of the most opportunistic and most effective villains in the Marvel Universe, in any fiction, to be honest. This guy was getting away with stuff you wouldn't even dream of, and the city loved him on the surface. It was amazing. Nothing like him. There's nothing like him. So just absolutely just horrendous, but at the same time impressive. And you're going to see it. That's a theme that's what we're running with here. The next one, in my opinion, who was an awful, disgusting villain, is Norman Osborn. Now you may think to yourself, Norman Osborn from the same series? Not that series. We're talking about Norman Osborn from the Marvel Comics. He was somebody who, in my opinion, from 2009 all the way to, I would even say, when did Siege end? 2012? I will say 2012. This guy was absolutely, positively awful. Like, he was what people thought of, you know how people don't like Trump? He was that guy. And he was in every book. And you grew to hate him. You really did. Let me tell you something. The things he did, he would always be the one responsible for every horrible thing. And he was good. He was effective at causing a nightmare for every protagonist out there. Every hero out there was on the run. He turned them into full-on criminals. He flipped the game on them. He was basically the president at the time. He was what they called the top cop, America's top cop. He ran S.H.I.E.L.D., his own S.H.I.E.L.D. It was called Hammer. He was taking villains out of prison privately and turning them into quote-unquote heroes. He had his own Avengers. It was called the Dark Avengers. It was horrendous. It was like you're on the run. Everybody a criminal. We're all on the run. It was like the cover, like that X-Men cover where the Days of Future Past is basically like that. You're on the cover, you're running. Yeah, you're basically on the run. You got your own wanted poster with your own bounty. It was crazy, man. Listen, I hated that guy so bad. It was effective. They got me. They turned me into an anti-Osborne guy. I was like, I hate this guy. Can't stand him. This guy's the ultimate troll. Get rid of him. And then when he was finally getting destroyed in Siege, all his empire was falling apart. I was celebrating. I was like, every book, I'm buying every book. You got me. So that was a well told story, in my opinion. That's how you build a villain. You start him out as somebody who's not that special, and then you level him up slowly but surely, and he's effective at every step of the way. He's not incompetent. He's not some loser. He knows what he's doing, and he played you. He played everybody. That's also a theme you're going to notice here. Somebody who on the surface seems a little unhinged or ridiculous and silly, but really under the surface, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. So, number 2 spot, Raul Julia Bison from the Street Fighter series. Raul Julia is absolutely, positively one of the greatest actors of all time, in my opinion. He was a very good actor, especially with his M. Bison routine. He was silly, yeah. He hammed it up. He was silly. He was ridiculous. But in the end, the things he was saying and the things he was doing were coinciding. He had the world on his iron fist. People were going to actually pay him. He had the world held hostage. He said, if you don't give me these this amount of money so I can start my own country and start my own empire, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill all these hostages and it's going to be on your head. And these people were bending the knee to him. They were absolutely bending the knee to him. He was actually going to succeed. If it wasn't for Colonel Guile, this guy would have succeeded, in my opinion. He would have made it because he already had a plan. He already was successful in most of the things he needed to do, and he just kept getting W's. This guy was hamming it up, and he still had W's. He was getting played by these other the Ryu and Ken characters, but he was still getting W's. He don't even care. He was like, what the heck? He was so naive throughout the movie because he was still getting W's. He was naive but still dangerous. Any man who's naive but still dangerous, that's gonna be a villain you have to take seriously. I'm sorry. That's like, whew, dangerous. Last but not least, number one spot is gonna be Sakio. Sakio is a guy from Yu Yu Hakusho who was I think it was the second or third big villain in the show. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that guy was a gambling addict, but also sadistic. He was sinister, he was sadistic, he was absolutely evil. Nothing good about him. Well, there was maybe one good thing about him, but the guy played everyone. He was always on top. He was a degenerate gambler. He liked to double the stakes, triple the stakes, quadruple the stakes. He didn't care. He kept adding the pressure. The man was unstoppable. In my opinion, the man couldn't be beat when it came to his own game. He had a game to play. If you played it with him, you're gonna lose. Okay? You're gonna lose. In the end, he actually, again, by his own device, right? By his own trust in his own henchmen, he was defeated. That's how he lost. He lost by gambling too high, and his own henchmen got one up under him. Okay? He had his own goon had his own agenda, and it played him. And that's how it goes, man. You sometimes, when you're too degenerate, you pay for it. And he paid the ultimate price. He paid with his life. Now, if you don't think that's a dangerous villain, I don't know what is. A man who's really willing to throw it all away and just basically throw his entire life away just for his own degenerate gambling. That's something else, man. That's a villain who can't be stopped. He already had money. He had money. He had power. Oh, and did I not forget? He turned an entire horrible thing into... Okay, this guy, he had a whole underground... It wasn't enough. Nothing was enough for him. He started an underground demon thing, a whole demon illegal slave trade. Where it started out as bodyguarding, right? So it started out small. I'm gonna have demons. They're gonna be bodyguards for the rich elite. And then one day he said, that's not enough. We need to do more. So they started consuming these demons and recording it. And he started taping that stuff and started selling these snuff films. That's what his thing was. Yeah, the evil little club. And not only that, right? People were paying for this stuff, right? And not only that, it was just awful. This guy had a slave trade. He turned it into a full slave trade. This guy absolutely made billions off of this. He turned a small little thing like that into a whole ass business empire. And he kept gambling. He didn't stop. This is somebody who is just destructive in all of the ways, right? This guy was just always sadistic. He came from a nice home. There were white-collared parents who worked, who made a good living. His family, his brothers and sisters got white-collar jobs, and they were all, doing well. And he hated all of them. He hated them all for that. He didn't want that kind of life. He was absolutely disgusted by that. He wanted to be a criminal. This guy straight up knew who he was at a young age, and he committed to it. I don't know what to tell you guys. That's evil all the way down, okay? And he was smooth, too. He was a smooth villain. He wasn't like, oh, look at me, I'm a villain, ha, ha, ha. No, he was hey, this is just who I am. I'm all about this. This is my life, and he was unapologetic about it. I don't know what to tell you guys. That's the number one rich villain in the entire fiction, in my opinion. The guy is just a non-stop, like, horror show from start to finish. And he ended his life in a destructive way. Anyways, that's it for today. If you like this one, hit the like button. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.